questions. I know Rondell had a question on the recipe app. Does anybody have any other questions on anything right now? Like, I'm gonna open it up to any questions that anybody has on the recipe app or any other apps that you may be working on.
Can I do smell burning?
What?
Does it smell like burning? It smell burning? It smells burning.
I mean,
Yeah, it's probably
it smells like now. It's
the pizza place.
it's the pizza because their oven is on our wall. Yeah.
I'm working on the recipe app, so I'm curious about creating, even though there are already recipe apps out there, I was wanting to create a space for my aunt to save her recipes, but I wanted them to show up in a fashion that's more pleasing to the eye. So I did figure out I could use in each do, breaking apart the ingredients based on commas, so tell people to write their ingredient list with a comma between, and then I can split that out into a list. But I'm not sure about the instructions, or if I should just, it may be best to just let them figure that out. Because right now it bunches, it takes away the spaces since when you show it up again, like even if you put a space between that, when it pulls back up on the screen and then search, it'll have the spaces on it. It'll just be one long clump.
Okay, yeah.
I'm trying to figure out how I would remedy that.
Right. So I can give you a few suggestions. So for example, there's a gem called a red cloth. First, let me tell you about this language. Have you guys heard of the language markup? No?
Markup language?
Markup language? It's just markup. Textile markup. Yeah, it's so it's a language that's if you go to let's see, let's go to, bless you. Let's go to GitHub. So this is just a normal GitHub repository, right? And then most of the time you're going to see that if you keep going down, GitHub automatically shows you this readme.rdoc file. And you can see that there's like a little table, there's like other stuff. So there's some format to it, right? So this is actually written in, typically is written in Markdown. So let me click on this file, because you can see that right here it says readme.rdoc, and that's a file that's here. You see that readme.rdoc? So by default, GitHub shows you the contents of that file right below all your files.
So do you think I should save it to something like a YAML file and then bring it up during the search, or no? I save it in a separate file to keep it formatted?
I think that you should. Well, let me continue. But so if we open up this file and then we look at raw, you can see that that's actually what the file looks like. So there's like these lines, like two equal signs and then coupling. So it's like a little mini language, and then it gets. That's how it shows up. So one of the things that if you see over here in the mini language, you see that, like for example, this is all. Well, let's see. Let's take for example these two kind of like paragraphs, right? This is the raw text, and so those get formatted as let's see, supporting background. Where is it? Right here, supported platforms. And so you see that it doesn't remove the space, right? Because Markdown treats the space as something important. So this would help you, because like right now what it's doing is that HTML by default is removing the space, all the spaces, right? So so red cloth is the name of this gem that allows you. So what happens is that somebody types in their document in Markdown, and then you can take that Markdown code, compile it into HTML, and then display the HTML. So for example, you install it, gem install Redcloth, or you can also add it.
They would have to write it themselves in that Markdown language, like the user.
The user would, yeah. So what it addresses though is this problem with the spacing though.
Yeah.
So that they would not care about. Now you could teach them, like write a little bit above, like really simple stuff. Like they don't have to know everything about markup to do something that looks okay, right? So for example, let's see, like probably they don't need to know about headings, or maybe if you want them to know about headings, but let's see, numeric list, you just write number in front, so you can instruct them to write a number in front of the instructions, and then it automatically creates like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as a list. You can do images, but you don't have to do images. So it's a very simple way to do it really quickly, right? So that's one suggestion. Because the other suggestion is also to do let's see, a JavaScript, what do you call it, a WYSIWYG. WYSIWYG stands for what you see is what you get. So that's the other thing. So for example, you see that this is an example of a WYSIWYG. Let's see, lightweight editor. This is just, it looks like it's just a list of WYSIWYGs. But you can see that here, the user gets this formatting stuff. So they have the ability to highlight text, click on bold or italic, and so they have the ability to do a lot of this stuff. Now, this is usually what I found, that this is usually a little bit more challenging to set up, because you have to know JavaScript. You have to know how, like, if you encounter a problem, you have to be able to debug the JavaScript sometimes. And what this does is that it creates HTML as the user is typing. Essentially, as the user is typing, it's creating HTML, and then when you save it, it's going to be sending HTML, so that you save that HTML in the database. So those are like two options that you have. Probably the Markdown version is a little bit quicker to implement. It's a little bit faster, but the user is not going to have as much flexibility. It's a little nicer to see those buttons there. And then the WYSIWYG is a little bit more difficult, I would say, to add, but it's nicer.
I kind of want to do the challenging one.
Try it, because we're going to eventually get to JavaScript, look at some JavaScript, so there might be some good experience. Yeah.
I'll try it. I'm not sure. I'll be pulling what little hair I have, but I want to try it. Thank you.
Sure. All right. Anybody have any other questions? Rondell, you still have a question, right?
Yeah, I think I have a database.
Okay, so I'm going to open up your app. Let's see.
It's under Rails.
Right here, right?
It's under recipe app.
Okay, recipe app. And so what are you doing right now to, are you trying to run it?
Yeah.
And this is the error that you're getting right here. The undefined method amount equals. Okay, so when you have undefined method amount equals, that means that like anything equals in your model, like your recipe model right here. And that probably means that that column is not defined in the database, right? Because it's saying I can't do amount equals, right? If we look at that, where that is in app.rb line 34. You can just look at that right here, right? App.rb line 34. So let's look at app.rb line 34. And you see that it's recipe.amount equals amount. So that's where the error is happening. So what I'm going to do is just to check the columns in the database is I'm going to load the console. And then I'm going to do recipe.new. Okay. And you see that there's no amount there, right?
Yeah,
So
to change yield to amount because I kept getting an error for yield. I'm not sure if that's.
Oh, yeah.
Something like that.
yeah, yield is a special Ruby keyword.
Okay, that's why I have to change it to amount. Same thing.
So if you change it to amount, then let's look at the migrations. You only have one migration and you change it to amount, right? But when you change it right here, and if this migration already happened, if it already got rolled up, then the next time you do rake db migrate, nothing's going to happen because it's going to look at this migration. It's going to say, oh, I already did that.
That's why. Okay.
Yeah, so you have to, yeah. So you have to undo it with Rails DB rollback,
Okay.
modify it, and then migrate it again.
Okay.
Yeah.
I figured it may be that, but I was wondering why I didn't run DB migrate, which makes sense.
Cool. So anyone have any other questions? Okay. Oh, yeah, I'm gonna move the quiz for Saturday. I had an appointment today this morning I had to prepare for, so I apologize, I didn't have enough time for creating the quiz, but at least you get more time, right, to prepare for the quiz.
I want to know what's going to be on it, and I know this is not how the quizzes work. Probably.
It's gonna be the migrations, it's gonna be about migrations, like that kind of stuff, like what do you do when something like that happens, and it's also gonna be about embedded Ruby. All right, so if we don't have any more questions, then we can continue our survey app. So just to review what we did last time, let's see. So let me open up, let me start the Rails server. Okay, so I open up my application. I have a login link. I click on it, and then I previously, last time I created a user, and then I can log in, and it says welcome with my email address, and then I can log out. Right. So last time we basically just added the ability for us to be able to log in or log out from our website. Right? Any questions on that? And so we use device to give us the ability to do that. Right? All right. So then what we want to do this time, let me open up notes.txt. And this is what we want to do, right? This is what we thought about doing before. So ability to log in with a password, that's done. Ability to log out, change password. So let me log in. So I don't have the ability to change password, right? So device gives you that ability. It's already built in. Let me open up another terminal. And how you would do it is well, I typically, we talked about this, that if you do Rails routes, that tells you all the routes in your application that are all the defined routes in your application. So why am I not going to routes.rb to just look at the routes?
Because it doesn't have, or I think it doesn't have, does it get everything from Devise, or are Devise routes in a separate place, right? They're a separate place from the routes.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So let me open up routes.rb. And you see that that's all that's there, right? Now there's this line right here, line 2, that when we ran the device installation, device added that for us. And it says device for users. So this method, this is a method, device for, and we're passing it a symbol. And the symbol is just telling us what's the name of our model, like it's a user model. And so with this line 2, device is defining a whole bunch of routes for us. And so I can't easily see them in routes.rb. So that's why I'm using Rails routes to be able to see all the available routes. Okay. So just if we look at the device documentation, we're going to see that the URL for editing a password is users password edit. And you can probably see that it probably makes sense because that routes to the controller device / passwords, and then the action edit in that controller, right? That's our usual controller name, pound, actioning format. Right? Okay. Questions? All right. So I'm just going to make a link to here, to this URL. And let's see, copy. And that's going to be in app, views, and then, let's see, where is it? Home. Right, that's where we put our, if user signed in, else, right? So if the user is signed in, what we want to do is we also want to show a link to be able to edit your password. So just href equals, and then that's the URL. And then I'll just put edit profile. So let me refresh. And you see that we have the link there. And I click there, it's not doing anything. Let me see. Do I have the routes correct? Let's see. Oh, I think it's this one. Edit users edit. So let me use that one instead. And if you were doing this yourselves, you would probably just look at the documentation and try to figure it out or guess.
When I didn't know that you didn't use user password.
Oh, you did. Okay, so here we go. So now it gives us the ability to edit a password, right? So let me put in another password. This is new password. And this is the current password. Update. No. So now let me try to log in with a new password. It works. Questions? All right, so we have the ability to change your password, ability to recover a lost password. So that's also something the device has. So let me log out. And then I'm going to click login, and you see here that there's a link for forgot password. You click it, and then you type in your email address. Click send me reset password instructions. We get an error, right? So let's see. And the reason this happens right now is because we haven't set up the ability for our Rails application to send emails. So we're going to skip that for now, but we'll come back to it, see how we can send emails from a Rails application. But you can see that the ability is there, built by device. Yep. So that's our system, right? Any questions? Any other questions? Okay. All right. So then now we're going to be moving on to actually, creating surveys and that kind of stuff. Right, so we want the ability to take a survey, right? So we said that before, we wrote, these are our notes. And we have a user ID. We want a date. We want, and these are the two questions that we want to ask our students is how difficult you found the class, and if you have any comments about that class. Any questions? So what I'm thinking is that, so right now we have, right here, I'm going to write tables for my application, right? What I'm thinking, I'm going to be thinking about how to structure my data in the database, right? So I have, in order for my application to be able to do useful stuff, it needs to save some information. And then right now I'm going to be thinking about how I'm going to be saving that information. Do I need to create more tables? Do I need to create, columns? What columns should my tables have? That kind of stuff. Right? So this process is can typically be like iterative. So you start thinking about something, you throw it out there. It may or may not work. You may have to go back and add another table, add columns, that kind of stuff. So let's start just by, I'm just going to say that I have a users table. And then what do you guys think? We probably need another table for surveys, right? So should we add a surveys table? What do you guys think?
Surveys table that has categories for the date that it was that the survey was taken, their difficulty score and the comment score, and it collects them, and also the user ID column. And then the main table, the users table, would have an ID column, and that's what we use to connect the two. Have an ID column, an email address, I guess, because we need that to email them their password or something.
Right, yeah.
And what else? The classroom.
The classroom.
What course do we take? And then I guess that wouldn't matter.
So there's a few things. So first, Device already had created a users table with all those columns for us, so that's good.
Okay.
And so now you're right. So let's start with surveys table. So I'm just going to write pound in front to indicate that that's the table where it's really 2 pounds. And then we say that it's going to have a user ID column, right? So that specifies which user is taking the survey. Then it's going to have a date column. That's the date for the class. So that kind of tells us which class they're taking the survey for, right? So, for example, today is June 27. So even if they take the survey like a day later or 2 days later, this date would be the 27, right? Okay. So I'm just going to write there date when class happened. Just a comment for myself. All right. So now difficulty, and then comments. Okay. So now let's think about the types. So what should user ID be? What type?
Or do we want it to be?
Yeah, because
variety. I think integer.
integer, because all the IDs for our tables are integers. So we want to, it has to be an integer.
Yeah.
Are there ever any cases where it's not an integer?
There are cases if you're,
You could probably do it where it's not specifically the user ID that's kind of automatically assigned. It could be an additional ID, kind of like a SKU that we did for books. That could be a mix of numbers and letters, and then you can use that instead. Even though you'll still have the other ID.
right.
Okay.
Yeah, some bigger apps prefer to use, for IDs, they prefer to use strings. But I would say that those are really, really big apps, and probably for our purposes and for any apps that you're going to be working with Code the Dream, it's just going to be, IDs are just going to be integers.
Okay.
All right, so then the date is going to be of type date. Mhm. And the difficulty,
Or you can do integer if you're doing the right case.
yeah, I'm going to do integer since it's from 1 to 5. Right? And comments, that one's easy. String. Okay. All right, so yeah, let's go ahead and create my, I'm going to go ahead and create my model, right? So Rails G, I'm not going to type out the whole thing, generate Rails G. I'm creating a model. And then the model name.
Survey, capital S.
Yeah, exactly. Survey. Okay. So sometimes, this happens is that the name survey is either already in use in your application or reserved by Ruby on Rails. So let me make sure that did this also happen to you guys?
Yes.
Okay.
That's what I tried to yield.
Okay, so sometimes that happens, sometimes names are already used by Rails. So we have to come up with another name. So how about, what is,
What if you do it plural?
so yeah, that's a good question.
Another S.
It would add another S.
Surveys.
Oh, hold on a second.
Let's call it survey.
Whenever it rejects a model name, we'll just put it in another language.
Okay. Yeah, order two.
Can you guys hear me? They're saying that we got muted. Can you hear me now? Okay. Cool. I think it was only a few minutes. So, all right. So yeah, if we add another S, what Rails does is that when you type Rails G model, and then this model name right here, Rails tries to pluralize that, or I think if it thinks that it's already pluralized, then it makes it non-plural. So let's see what happens. So yeah, so see, try to create survey when we did surveys.
Oh, so either one is still that way.
Yeah,
What about ballot?
is it? Vote, tally. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do a class survey. Let's try that. Right. So notice that this is the convention that we try to use, and you have to adhere to this convention. Class survey is 2 words. And so what we do is that we capitalize the first letter of each word. And we don't put a space between, because if we put a space between that, then it wouldn't be one model, it would be 2 models.
Can you put underscore?
The convention, you could, but the convention is that you should not put an underscore. Yeah. The name of this style of naming is called camel case. You have heard of it before? Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, exactly. Because yeah, camels have humps. And so you have like little humps with the capitals. Where every time there's a capital letter, it's like a little hump.
I put a lot of thought behind this name.
Oh, man, you don't even know. Programmers, they come up with a name for everything.
Everything's
Yeah,
named
everything.
so elaborate. You're like,
Yeah.
oh, I didn't think that was.
Yeah, and so a big part of becoming a programmer is just learning all the terminology, all the lingo. And the faster you can get to learning the lingo, the easier things become. C survey? Oh, yeah, like something like that? Yeah, so it could, right? It could. That's probably perfectly legal. But whenever you're writing an application, don't try to like shorten things unless necessary. Try not to do acronyms, right?
So
So
they still count that as camel case?
yeah, that would still be camel case. Yeah.
I guess because somebody else probably wouldn't know what that means.
Yeah, somebody that came and just saw your application, it would be a little bit more difficult to understand.
You might think it's a typo.
Yeah, like maybe they read it as CS Irving or something like that.
Current survey.
Yeah. So it's always best practice to write out a whole word, to not abbreviate it. So in this case, it kind of sucks, but you just have to deal with it.
You're the one maintaining this. You gotta know what you're dealing with, right?
Yeah. All All right, so, we created that model. It created our migration and created a model class, a Ruby class. So now look at the name of the class file. The name of the class file is class_survey, right? So now it added the underscore, and the C and the S are lowercase. So this type of naming convention also has a name, and this is called snake case. And I guess it's because the little underscore looks like a snake. Yeah, maybe.
Learning case.
I just like that they were thinking about that. I can just imagine someone thinking like all day, like, how do I call this?
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, it's weird, right? But I think it makes sense because whenever you're talking to somebody, you can just say, oh, write it in camel case. Instead of saying like, capitalize each letter of every word and then do
And then
this.
you have other programs like Java and C++ that require you to follow
A convention.
like a convention.
Yeah.
And so, when you get taught all these conventions, and you are on a test, and you don't follow those conventions, if they fail you.
I'm gonna drop that on somebody who actually knows nothing about computer. Camel case that for me. I'm gonna explain it to them and make them feel really
How did you make someone feel bad? No, we want people to like the program.
bad. Camel case.
All right, so I'm going to open up the DB folder and the migration. So now we have two migrations, right? One's for the user, one's for the class survey. So I open up right here, and then I'm going to add my columns. So in this case is integer, user ID, let's see, what else we have? Date, difficulty, and comments. So it's a type date, and it's date, integer, and difficulty, and then comments, which is a string. And this time I'm going to leave timestamps there. So remember that timestamps just adds two columns, created at and updated at. And I just want to see maybe I want to see when the user took the survey. Right?
Yeah.
Hey, Miro, can you refresh my memory? Why is the database before the devise not created? We run something different.
Why is what? Say that again.
Is devise _create?
Why is that there?
Something different for that when they get devise out.
Yeah, we ran,
I can't remember.
was it Rails G device model, I believe. So when we,
Okay.
Yeah. After we install
Devise. Okay.
yeah, let's see, device.
We did devise install first, and then we did Rails generate devise.
Okay, so let me get generate
Yeah.
devise.
Yeah, so we did Rails G device and then user. That's what we did.
Okay, that's why. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Sorry, I was saying model was not clear. Well, it users the model.
Yeah, user is the name of the model. That's what we picked to be the name of the model, right? We could use a different model. Yep. All right, so we have that, and so now we can roll the migration. So Rails DB : migrate. Okay, so it should have created a table. It tells us right here that it created a table, class surveys. So I'm gonna just open up the Rails console real quick and do a class survey.new. And yeah, we see all the columns there. Right. Okay. Questions? All right, so now what do you guys think would be the next step? Now that we have the model, we have a way to save data. So now we need a way to collect our data.
Should we create a program where you ask us questions and we
I'm gonna use a form like before. I've used
Yep.
the form with the, for mine, I did difficulty, but I did it with strings, and I just used a drop down, and it could choose which one, and then that would be put in the spot. But they could choose an integer instead, or put in an integer. I guess it would be a drop down.
Right.
They click a button. Could it be a radio?
It can be a radio. Yeah. So yeah. So I mean, the main thing is that we need a form to collect the information. We're going to submit that form and then save that survey, right? So, but in order for us to be able to show a form, we need to create an action, right? So the very first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to add a route for that. So do get survey, and I'm going to send that to the application controller and the survey action. Right, so that's just our convention. We're sending that URL to that controller and that action. So then what I have to do is I have to open up app controllers and then application controller, and then I have to define the action there, survey. Okay. So in my routes, I'm sending it to application survey. And then in my application controller, I'm defining the survey action. For this case, I really just want to show a form, right? They're just going to be requesting a form, and I'm going to be showing the form. And so I don't need any code in this action. I just need it to be there. Otherwise, yeah, it won't show. All right. So then now I need to create my view, right? So I'm going to go to app views and then application folder, and then add a file there. That's going to be called survey.html.erb. Here's where I'm going to be creating my form. So it's a form. And then this time I'm going to do method equals post. I'm going to do the post method. In the action, this time I'm going to do it to survey. I'm posting to the URL survey using the post method.
Do you need to switch it from a get into the post? Or no?
So that's a very good question. And then so if I do a get for this URL, then I can do a post for the same URL,
Okay.
but then I can send it to a different action. So application,
Maybe like when they submit it.
so the action is going to be create survey. So if they do a get request to the URL survey, I'm going to send them to the survey action. If they do a post request with the URL survey that says the same URL, the only thing that changes is the type of request that I'm doing. I'm going to send them to a different action. So that's one thing that you can do with routes, is that A get request gets sent here, a post request gets sent over there.
Nice. Okay. You have to make sure the object that you program is different. So it's not sent to the same place, right?
It would be the
I mean,
method,
the action.
the action. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
That page, the create survey, like, that action, it'd be nice if we could include like a message successfully submitted.
Yeah. So we'll do that. Yeah, that's a good idea. So let me just I'm gonna create that action, create survey. Okay. And then I'm gonna continue with my form. So I wanna think about gathering the information that I need for my survey here. So I need the user ID. So should I have a field in my user ID? Or should I have a field in my form that's user ID?
Under hidden.
A hidden, that's a good, we can do a hidden.
Automatically assigned.
Yeah.
It's not automatically assigned.
Oh.
But we have that variable current user that the device gives us, or that method that returns the current user. So a hidden is a good guess, but we don't have to do a hidden, because if the user is logged in, then the device is going to give us which user is logged in right now.
Okay.
So that,
we don't have, the user doesn't actually have to type the ID, right?
right,
Okay.
yeah. Mhm. All right, so what about, let's see, the next one is a date. So we would need a date for the class, right? So how would we know, like if the user just goes to that URL, how would the user know, or how would our program know which class they're taking a survey for?
By the time,
By the current time?
by the current time, yeah. Or the time the access.
But that won't work if you're doing a survey for like yesterday, right?
Yeah, that would only work if you do the survey the same day of the class, right?
Right.
So how would we do it then?
Ask that question again, please.
So right now, like if I went to the URL survey, I'm my form. I have a form, and then I'm trying to gather all the information from that in that form to save a class survey, right? To save all this information, and then part of that has to be the date for that survey, right?
Would you need to create another column, like the instructor or the class name, something like that?
It's a good guess, maybe.
In, okay.
Could the user just put it in?
The user could put it in, yeah. So
Say
the user could just say, I'm taking this survey for that class that happened that date, right? So that's one option.
I mean, you have to have that option in the form.
Yep. Uh-huh. Yep.
I mean, option.
So yeah, I mean,
You could give them a list of dates and they can choose, but that seems like a lot of
In this,
unnecessary.
with
Yep.
this survey, like, would someone, would there, like, okay, I don't even know what to ask.
just throw it out there. We'll
Okay,
fix it.
so, you know how you give us the surveys, every class, right?
Uh-huh.
So you send it out, right?
Yep.
So if we're filling out a survey, wouldn't it be already somehow filled? Or that date met by whoever is sending it?
It would be nice, right?
Right.
So how would we do that? How would we're just going to that URL /survey, and then we're trying, like now we are coding the generation, we're generating that form that the user is going to be filling out. So the only information that we really have at this point is that URL /survey. So from that information, how would we know what form to generate, right? Does that make sense? But Crystal pointed out that
Yeah,
the user can just fill it in, right? So at this point, maybe we don't understand exactly how it's going to work. Let's just go with the easiest thing, and that's typically how you want to develop your apps. It's like, I don't really know how to do that, so let me just do the easy thing. Later on, we might change it, and that's perfectly acceptable. I think that you just want to go with make it work as soon as possible. So that's what we're going to do. And so what we're going to do is we're going to do input and then type equals text. And then we want to name this this field. So the name is going to be date. And then let's do a placeholder equals date.
I'll put class date because they may put today's date. I'm saying this
Oh,
to people who
okay,
don't
yep.
fix this shit.
Class date. And then another one would be input. And what's another column that we have? We have the difficulty. So for that, Crystal pointed out that we could do a radio button, right? So that's what I'm going to do. Input type equals radio. And then name equals difficulty. And for these radio buttons, you have to specify the value of each radio button. So the value for this one's going to be 1. And then we do 1. And then I'm going to copy 5 of those. So all of those have to have the same name, but just different values. So this one's going to be 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, and then see what's the next thing that we have. And from the next piece of information is comments, right? So we need comments. So this one I'm going to do a text area. Text area name equals comments. And then that's it. And then I want a submit button. So input type equals submit. Value equals save. Okay. So that's my form. So let's just see how it looks. So here at the root, and then I want to go to survey, and that's my form, right? So here I could type in the date, and then select the difficulty level. And now you see that since we named it the same, it only allows me to select one of them at a time. And then over here, I can type a comment and probably click save here. Yep. Okay, so we got an error there because we haven't
We haven't
done the
specified
next
how
part.
to save it, which is object new or class dot new.
Class survey that new.
Yes, class survey. No, I was just saying class in general.
Oh, okay. Yep. uh-huh.
Sorry, but yeah, that's, yeah. See, it's confusing.
Yeah, it is. All right. So questions so far?
Can you back to the code real quick?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine.
All right. All right. So I'm gonna try to make it a little nicer, and I'm gonna add Bootstrap, and then I'm gonna add those classes to this form. So do you guys remember how to add Bootstrap?
Say it again?
Do you guys remember how to add Bootstrap to your app?
Totally.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm just gonna let you do it.
So you just go to app views application.html.erb and you just add load Bootstrap here. So and you get it from get Bootstrap. Actually, not get Bootstrap, but Bootstrap CDN. And then here's the CSS that you have to copy. Okay. And let's see, let's refresh this. Okay. It looks like it's there. And then now I'm in here in my, I'm gonna put a div with a class of container. And I'm gonna put my yield in there. And class container just puts like some spacing, some margins on the left-hand side and the right-hand side. So refresh. So now you see that there's some spacing, right? That's in right here. Okay, so then I'm gonna add classes right here to my my inputs. So I'm gonna go to find replace, and then replace input with input class equals, now the class is form control. That's the Bootstrap class. And then also my text area class equals form control. Okay. And then we have to put them in class input group, I believe. Let me see. Let's just do the first one and see how it looks. I don't think it's that, so let's check it out. And I never remember. This is something that you can always look up. It's easy. Yeah. So form dash group, and then the input is there. So it's form dash group and then form control. Refresh. All right, and that looks a little bit better. Okay. All right, so that's for the date, and actually let's look at radio button. Let's see, they give us an example of a radio button. All right, radios. So it looks like for a radio button, we just put class is a div with a class radio. And then, oh, here we go, inline radios. So class label, class radio inline, and then this one, and then the next one. So we just have to wrap it in class radio inline, and then they don't have the class they don't have the class form control, right? So radio buttons are a little bit different than your typical input field. So div class equals radio inline. Then that goes there. See, let me just make sure I did it correctly. So label class radio inline and the input. Okay, so this is actually a label instead of a div. Sure.
You can't put those radios in a group?
In what, like in a form group right here? Inside a div class form group?
Yeah, but would you still have to do the label class equals radio all the time?
These class things, it's for styling, so it's not necessarily saying that it's grouping them together, recognizing it as a form. It's just a styling label. So it's saying when you do the form group, it's referring to styling for specific form elements, and then the class radio inline is another styling.
Right,
That's
right.
used for the radio.
But rather than just keep typing label class equals radio inline for all of them, can you just put it all in that label class already?
It looks like, that's a good question. So that it looks like for Bootstrap, you have to put each of them in a label. And yeah, and the reason, so there's a reason for it though. Because you see that you have this input type radio name, right? That's this tag right here corresponds to just a little circle. Now the number 1 is outside after the input. That corresponds to this one right here. So now let's say that the user wants to click on that text, the one. They don't click on the little circle, they click on the text. Say it selects that button, it selects that radio button. And that's what, putting it inside that label, that's what it does. So if you didn't have it inside the label, then clicking on the text wouldn't select it. So
Right. And I understand that, but I guess my question was, so if you go back to that Bootstrap,
right here.
right? Why couldn't you have all those input type equals, or, radio and all that stuff, all 5 inside just one label class, radio inline? Could you have that? You know what I mean?
Yeah, so let's see. So the label
Right.
tells you that that any text inside there, when you click on that text, then it selects the input inside that label.
So that's why you can't put more than one item inside that label?
Yeah,
Okay.
Mhm.
Right. Thank you.
sure. That's a good question. So I'm actually going to delete all of those and instead just copy this. So that's 3, 4, 5. And then I have to go 1, 2, 4, 5. I also have to change the values. So this is 5, this is 4, 3, 2. Okay, and I'm gonna put my text area inside a div form group. Okay. Save and then refresh. And now you can see that it looks a little bit better, right? I'm going to try to see what happens if I put all of my labels inside a form group, all of my radio stuff. So div class equals form group. Right, so I have some space. Right? Putting it inside a form group give me some space between the checkboxes or the radio buttons and this comments right here, text. Let me add also a placeholder for the comments. So that's text area name, and then placeholder equals comments. So refresh, okay. All right, any questions?
Can you go back?
Okay, any questions?
No.
All right, so if I put in a class date, 6/27, and then I select difficulty, so it's not gonna work yet, right? But so let me add some text above it. So like class difficulty. So, I'm just gonna do div class equals row, and then now I'm using the Bootstrap grid system. So I have a row, and then I'm going to have a column inside that row, and that column is going to be 12 cells wide. So to do it 12 cells wide, class equals call -md 12. And then inside there, I'm just going to say how difficult was the class. And refresh. And now we have that text there, right? All right. So now what I want to do now is I want the ability to save this to the database. Right? So now we have to work on our other method. So let me close that. We have to work on our create survey method. Right? Before we're able to save with a post request, we can right now we can save with a get request, but before we're able to save with a post request, we have to comment out this line right here on our application controller, line 2. Just comment that out. Future classes will come back to what that does, but for right now we comment it out. So now here in create survey, we would do, let's do survey equals class survey dot new, and now we want to set all the parameters. So survey dot date equals params date. Survey dot what else do we have? Difficulty equals params difficulty, and then survey dot comments equals params comments, and then survey dot save should save it to the database, right? So these are the 3 things that we're getting from our form. We're getting the date, we're getting the difficulty, and we're getting the comments. We also need the user ID, and this is what we were talking about before, is that device gives us a method in our action. In this class, the application controller action, it gives us a method called current_user that returns it loads the user object of the currently logged in user. So then what we have to do here is we have to do survey.user ID equals current_user.id. Okay, so let's test it. It may not work. So the date is 6/27. Difficulty, let's say that it was very easy. Yep. So good class. So let's click on save. And then undefined method ID for nil class. So what do you guys think this error is? Just looking at it right now, where you can see where it occurred, right? The error occurred here in line 12, where we were doing. That's a very good point, right? So let's see if we are logged in. So I'm gonna go the home page, and yeah, it gives me a login. So that means I'm not logged in. So let's log in. So then let's go to survey, and then 5 class, click save, and then it worked. I don't know if it worked.
That's why you need the message.
You do? Yeah, you need a message. So
Can you pull up the comment, or we need to create a search?
let's pull up for now. Let's do the console, Rails C, and then class survey.count. So it's one. There's one there. Let me load all. So class survey.all. So it loads all the current surveys. So user ID is 1, which should be my user. The date is what I put there. Difficulty is 5. Comments, created at, updated at. So it works, right? Cool. So now, like Crystal said, we probably need. It would be nice to have a message.
Yeah, we should click that button, maybe get out of that survey.
Yeah. So
Say, hey, your survey was completed.
Yep.
Or submitted.
or we could, yeah. So what I'm gonna do, so by default, Rails looks at the URL, and right now Rails is trying to be too smart. So Rails looks at the URL, and then it loads that. What it did is it loaded that template. But what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna create a template for create survey. So right here is right click on application, new file, create survey.html.erb. And then it's just I'm gonna do an H1. I'm gonna use the CSS. Let's see. They have something called alerts. So components. Yeah, here we go. Alerts. So I'm gonna make a look at like that, like the green one. So what I need for that is I need just that class. So it's a div class alert, and then alert dash success, role equals alert, and then here I would just put survey completed successfully. Okay, so let's do another survey. So here's this. Click on save, and now we have the message survey completed successfully.
Did you say you use CSS?
I use the class alert and then alert success.
Now, I was wondering if we could do maybe an if statement or something where if it's not completed successfully, it takes them somewhere else.
Yeah, that's a very good point. So right now we don't know how to do that yet exactly, but we're gonna get to it. So yeah, Crystal's right. Like, let's say that for some reason the survey was not saved. The way we're doing this is always going to show up. So then for some reason the survey was not saved, this message would still show up. And so it would give the user a false message, right, essentially. So we have to figure out what to do in those cases, but that's coming. All right, questions on this so far? Right, so I think like now this is kind of like the second time we've done this, right? So is it helping to get it in your minds a little bit more? Maybe.
It's drying, I guess.
Okay. All right. Let's see. All right, so now that it's working, right? We're able to do surveys, right? And that's what you want to do in your applications. You want to get to like a working product as quickly as possible, and then continuously improve on that. So now it's working. awesome. But there's a few things, and the way I've been showing you how to do things is it's not exactly how you're supposed to do it in Rails, but I'm showing it to you this way so that you get a better understanding of what Rails is actually doing. If I just show you how things are supposed to be done in Rails, it's just going to look like magic, and then you're not going to understand what Rails is doing. And so there's a few recommendations and suggestions as to how you're supposed to do things in Rails. So let's look at the first one. So the first one is that if you notice, we put everything in your application, in our application controller. So far, all of the Rails apps that we've created, we've only had one controller, and that's been the application controller. Well, except when we did the pet app and also the micropost app, right? But once we started letting Rails for real, we've only used one controller, the application controller. So the suggestion is that you really only want to put you really want to put all your stuff in another controller that's not the application controller. All right. So that's what's going to be our first step, is that we're going to move from the application controller, and we're actually going to put it in its own controller. Right? So in Rails, we have this convention. So we created a model that's called class survey. In Rails, we have the convention that our controller, if our controller is acting on some model, and by acting, I mean like the actions of the controller, like for example, in this case, create a class survey, or maybe delete a class survey or update a class survey, that's kind of working with that model. That's what I mean by working with that model. So a controller that's working with a particular model, we want to name it the same way as our model, but pluralize. And then controller. So it's going to be class surveys controller. Right? So now I'm going to generate a new controller, Rails G controller. Before we did model, now we're doing controller. It's going to be class surveys. That's it. We're not adding controller because Rails adds the controller part for us. So you see that right here, Rails created an app, controllers, and then class surveys controller. And if we look at that folder, the controllers folder, we have a class surveys controller. So now we have two controllers, right? Questions?
So now you have to change the routes.
Yes, exactly. So now let's go and change the routes. So instead of directing the URL survey to application survey, what should it be? Class surveys, yep. And then the same thing for the other one, class surveys. So now we don't have the methods in that controller yet, right? So we have to move them. So I'm going to go to my application controller and then take both methods and then move them into the class surveys controller. All right, do you guys think that's it? There's one more thing. Yep.
You're gonna uncomment the other stuff, right? That you.
You're talking about this right here?
Yeah.
No, that stays. Yep. So the other thing is the views, because right now they're inside the application folder. And so we need to create a folder, a views folder for each controller, because that's how Rails looks for the views. It looks for that folder for that controller, and that's where it looks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my views folder. I'm going to right click and do new folder in class underscore surveys. Class underscore surveys already exists. So that's, so when we, yeah, sorry, when we, let me delete that. Yeah, when we generated the controller, it already created it for us. All right, so we don't have to do that. So now, yep, we just want to move those files in there from application to class surveys. All right. So typically what you would want to do is you want to do this from the beginning, right? So you create a new model, and then you probably want to think about creating a new controller for that model. And so each model is probably going to have its own controller, most likely. All right. Any other questions? Questions? Okay. So there's that's the first thing, you know, is that's something that's like a good practice, is that each model has its own controller. So now the other thing is that the methods, the actions for doing certain things have there's a naming convention. So for example, what does this action do? This action just gives us a form for creating a new survey, right? So by convention, when you're creating the action that gives you the form for creating a new something, by convention, we call it new. So instead of survey, the survey action, we're going to call it the new action. And then this action is the action that actually creates the survey. So by convention, we call this the create action. And then there's a few other convention actions.
Do we now have to change that in the groups?
We do. Yep, exactly.
And do we have to change the HTML folder, create files, the names?
We do. Exactly. So let's do that first. So let me rename. Now I have to rename these files. So I have to do instead of create survey.html.erb is just create.html.erb. And then instead of survey.html.erb is new.html.erb. And then in my routes, I want to, instead of class surveys survey, is going to be class surveys new, and then class surveys update. Oh, sorry, not update, create. Okay, so now these are by convention, you know, these are the naming conventions. There's also edit. There's an action called edit, and that one is to get the form for editing something that's already created. There's also update. And then that's to get to actually update something that is already created, right? So this action, you would get that form, and then when you click submit on that form, it would go to this action, the update action. Just like right now.
And then we have to do delete. Do we do, or is it two separate actions for delete?
For delete, it's just one action typically, because you just probably have a button that you click, and it submits that to delete the survey.
Using the delete method.
Yeah, so this one is to delete something is destroy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's also another one called index. And that one is to list all the items that are created. So in this case, it would be all the surveys, a list of all the surveys. Okay, let's see.
So, I didn't do the first half of this.
Can you guys hear me?
So, I'm not really, hold on. I'm just trying to.
Yeah, I caught everything. I know how to look this video like 2 or 3 more times. Like I usually have already figured it out.
Bootstrap is not working out?
Yeah, it's looking funky. Kind of. It's in there.
You want to get, I mean, not get, but
Yeah.
Bootstrap CD. Oh, that's CSS. Is that what you said? Or did you say we need HTML?
That's the one of the options.
Oh,
You press on that.
For Bootstrap CDN right here. Yeah, you do the HTML.
Oh, that's why. CSS. That might be why.
Yeah, so the guys, the remote guys are having some difficulty hearing me. Let's see. Meeting and can you hear me now, guys? Hello, hello, testing.
I can still hear you.
Okay. I wonder what the problem is.
I think it's just the two guys can't hear you, but I can hear fine. They said you're going out.
Okay. So it might just be them, I'm guessing.
Yeah, because with all new wiring, I better hear somebody.
He said no.
Okay, let's see.
It's probably not that it's in those, or it's computer. Hey, Chris. That's your application, not HTML. That BRB.
See what, oh my. Wait. Did you not put anything in front of it and just paste the link?
I didn't link HRED.
Because you don't need to, it already placed that. The last time we did that, it doubled it
Yeah.
and it didn't work.
I don't see anything in my settings. So I'm going to continue, and you guys can, hopefully you can watch the video later. But yeah, we have to work that out. And I don't want to log out myself and log out again because I'm recording right now. I'm going to try to figure out after this class, since we only have 15 minutes. So let me see. Oh,
So you have to type it up what you're saying. Maybe a browser issue.
their browser. Let me see. All right, let's continue in the meantime. All right, so for now, I'm gonna delete those other methods that we're not using.
Now, it does have a cancel when you edit your membership or edit your information. It says not happy, we cancel. Would that link to the destroy, or does it have its own destroy?
That links to devices on destroy. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. All right, so, all right. Let's see, so we're here. All right, so just as a review, we created the surveys controller because we want each model to have its own controller. And then we also have a folder with the views. And then we have two actions, the new action and the create action. So just to test that it's still working, I'm gonna go to survey. Okay, create that. And then click save. And then, okay, still works. Right? All right. So questions? All right, so then let's see what's next. So any questions before we move on? Okay. All right, so now the other thing is, let me see if I want to cover this in the time we have. All right, let's do something easy because we don't have a lot of time. All right, so you might have seen that when we do Rails routes, if you remember, that just gives us all the routes that our application has, right? So it has, for example, so get survey. So that's /survey, right? So it's right there. And then that redirects that. We send that to the class surveys controller and the new action, right? So you might have seen this right here on this side that says prefix. And what prefix does is that when you define your route like this, for some cases, Rails gives you Rails creates a method for you that returns this URL right here. So in this, and how you can find out what that method is by looking at prefix right here. So our get and then survey, it tells us that survey maps to that URL. What's that? So so then in our form, let's go to the form, the new right here. Instead of just doing /survey, I'm going to use embedded Ruby to call that survey method. But it's not just survey. Survey is just a prefix. The name of the method is survey_path. So this right here is calling a method, survey path. And then we're inserting it into that part of the form, the HTML. So let me go here, and then I'm going to right click, view page source. And you can see that it says action equals /survey. Right? And that doesn't seem like much right now. It's like, okay, we didn't really gain anything. But in the future, we're going to see that these methods are going to be useful. And the reason they're useful is because we're going to be able to pass parameters to these methods, and they're going to make it easier for us to generate URLs.
For some reason, I'm getting. I didn't notice something. That's news. Saying under my method class_news for Rails module, but I don't have class.
What do you have in your routes.rb file?
I have this / application pound home, and then underneath the /survey class_survey pound new, and then slash for the post /survey class_survey pound new.
Let me take a look at it. So what's the error?
Oh,
Okay.
wait, what was here?
It's just
Survey, right?
No, it's just Rails routes draw. Yep. See, our application, sorry.
How did that get in there?
I think it's you. See, it's Rails.
Oh, it's application. Okay, so it was a replace, I think.
Oh, you did search and replace.
Okay. Oh, that. Thank you.
All right. So, any questions, guys?
When you did your radio, mine's jumbled up. Did you do something put space between it.
Let me go.
The radio buttons on the, yeah, there.
Do you have this?
Oh, you put it in a format.
Yeah. All right. So I'm gonna commit all this first. So git status. Okay. So git add and git commit. And this is add ability to create survey. And then git push. Okay, so that should be online. All right.
What was that? Oh, sorry, one more.
Go ahead.
What's the embedded Ruby survey?
All right, so go to the new form, and then the embedded for Ruby is just survey path. Yeah, you're just calling that method survey path.
Oh, like micropost path and user path, kind of like before.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Yeah, we don't have time to really cover anything else because most of the other topics that we have to cover are pretty in depth and pretty relatively long. So we're gonna end maybe like 5 minutes earlier, if that's good with you guys.
Okay. It's still showing up.
I put the code on GitHub, so if you want to just look at that file, views, class surveys, new. So that's the URL for the file. I just posted it on the Slack.
Are you gonna upload the other classes on YouTube?
Yeah.
I was trying to look it up on some
Yeah.
something like 16.
Yeah, I don't think I put them in there, but yeah, I should do it right now after class. All right. So